Hello and welcome. This is the Bits vs. Bytes podcast, episode number 4. My name is Amar Grigic and I'll be your host today. Joining me today is Niels Zeilenmaker from Go Data Driven. He is CTO there. Welcome, Niels.
Welcome. Thank you.
I would like to start off with knowing a little bit about your background. So how did you get into IT?
So that's a long story, I would say. So I think I don't know how old I was, but like around 10-ish, I would say. My mother brought in a computer at the home, and I was instantly hooked to computer gaming and that sort of stuff. So during high school, I would say a real interest in programming developed. And then, after high school, obviously, I started doing the bachelor's, computer science, etc., etc. So that was my official start of my IT career, I would say.
Okay, and you were really interested in that as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So that's what did that go into? Is that only the gaming part, or is it actually also the tinkering with computers and stuff like that?
No, so tinkering, yes, I would say. Programming, not so much initially.
Mm-hmm.
So tinkering, a lot. So disassembling, upgrading PCs, etc. That developed early on.
Okay.
But I would say programming came a bit later. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, cool. And what did you start in when you were programming?
I think I started with a bit of Visual Basic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most people do that.
yeah, it's nice and easy. So.
Yeah. And how did you get to Go Data Driven? How did you start there?
So actually, after my bachelor's, I did a master's and a PhD.
Okay.
And then when I was almost finishing the PhD, a former classmate of mine, Ron, he was a classmate of the bachelor.
Okay.
And he told me, I heard that you were looking for a job. You should consider Go Data Driven.
Okay.
Because he was working there at the time. He still is. And so I had a talk to the guys at GDD, and it was a good fit. So and that's why I chose to join Go Data Driven. Yeah.
Okay. And what spoke to you about it when you were thinking about joining GDD?
So my PhD was in parallel computing.
Okay.
So I think the big data space was kind of obvious. And then I was talking to a couple companies, some larger ones. But I was really attracted to the fact that the Go Data Driven at the time was a really small company with what I felt like was really bright people working there. And that basically convinced me to join Go Data Driven.
Because how many people were working there at the time?
I think 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're at?
I think now we're more or less 40.
So okay. Yeah, that's a nice size. let's put it like that. So could you tell the listeners a little bit about what Go Data Driven does? So what do you guys do in the daily basis?
Yeah, so we're a consultancy company focusing on the big data space.
Okay.
So we have basically 2 types of people, maybe now 3. So the big data engineers and the data scientists. And then in the middle, there's this new thing we call machine learning engineers, which are basically a bridge between the engineer and the data scientist. And then we do big data projects, let's say, for the top 100 companies in the Netherlands.
Okay.
So larger corporations. And then those projects, they range from small POCs doing small data science models to really big, let's develop a new big data platform where we can deploy and monitor data science models in production and all the stuff around it.
Okay. And could you tell a little bit about how Go Data Driven started? So how did it come about to start that company at all?
Yeah, so I think officially we started 5 years ago, maybe a bit more. But unofficially, it started a bit earlier. So basically, the then CTO Friso, together with Rob, my current boss still, they did a couple jobs in the big data space. I think they installed the first bol.com Hadoop cluster, and they did
really?
a couple of those projects while still being employed by Xebia. So Xebia has this. So basically, Godot-driven is still part of the Xebia group.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of the Xebia group is that if you have a good idea, you can pitch it to the big boss, Dan. And then if he likes it, you can start a company out of it.
Okay.
So Friso had some experiences with this big data technology from Bol. Then pitched this idea to Dan. Dan liked it as well. And they basically made a company out of it. Him together with Rob.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool because that means that whatever Xebia thinks is maybe the new thing to do, and you have that idea to start something with that, they give you the opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah. It's more or less the other way around. So if it comes from within the organization, so the idea is that if people have an itch, they want to go in a certain direction, and that direction seems interesting for the Xebia group as well. We'll just give them the chance to go forth with this idea and explore and make a company out of it.
Cool.
Because the reasoning behind it is that if you don't give people that opportunity, they will just leave, and then it will be a loss for the group altogether.
Yeah, because it could be a very in some cases it could be it could become a really big company because it has a good idea, you just let it walk. Right?
No. So actually, I think one of the companies actually got sold a while back, Xebia Labs, and it actually went from a small idea similar to Godot-driven to a really big company with I think employing like 150 people and eventually being sold. Yeah.
And looking at the types of clients, you mentioned the top 100 companies in the Netherlands. What are they like? What do they kind of have in the space of in the space of big data? So could you have an example for the listeners just to get a little bit of a sense of what kind of projects that are?
Okay, so let's start with the clients.
Yeah,
I would say it's a really broad range of clients. So you probably the clients you would expect. So the big financial institutions, so ING, ABN, Rabobank, that sort of stuff. But also going to the e-commerce side, so Weekamp or Bol.com or basically everything in between. Myself, I'm currently now at a project at Heineken, where it's maybe a slightly new type project, but basically we're creating a new department there actually. So it's not just using new technology to solve problems, but we're actually creating a new way of working called the Insight Lab. And we're doing really short running pilot projects basically, where we try to see if there's value in a particular piece of data. And if there is, we start an actual industrialization project and et cetera, et cetera. So if you zoom down a bit more, so what we actually did there is we basically designed a new platform to use within Heineken. And this platform allows data scientists to work on basically a big machine there, maybe combined with a Hadoop cluster, develop their data science model, and eventually we were actually running those models inside Docker containers and testing them out.
Okay.
If you look a bit more to the, let's say, more traditional projects like stuff we do with ING, then it's basically developing pipelines using, for instance, Airflow, which is now a popular tool to schedule a lot of ingestion jobs, monitor them, and basically make sure that data ends up in a Hadoop platform, but also gets processed and converted into different formats. And
Okay. And looking at the work you're doing at Heineken in this case, so you mentioned that it's kind of short running. Is it like? Could I see it like something like really experimenting, and it could fail, but it could also work? Or do I?
Yeah. I think fail fast is the primary driver there.
Okay.
So it's a small project. Also, the aim is not to make the best looking code or the best maintainable code. It's just to show the value of the data and maybe the modeling approach. And then once that's proven its worth, we actually destroy most of the code base and make an actual, let's say, engineering project out of it.
Yeah, because you do kind of a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Basically.
And even within, so we define 6 weeks as a time span, so 3 sprints of 2 weeks. You can imagine that within this 6 weeks, also the scope shifts
changes
a lot. So the code base, how hard you will try, it will always need to be rewritten.
Cool.
So that's basically from the get-go. We say, okay, we're going to build something. It's probably going to run at the end. Hopefully,
hopefully.
in some way. But you still need to rebuild it if we actually want to continue with it.
Okay, and because when you do that proof of concept and you're done with it, it becomes, in most cases, if it's viable, it will become an engineering project. How big are the teams when you are working on that proof of concept, for example?
Yeah, so it's basically a single data scientist.
Okay.
Working together with an engineer, but the engineer is shared over multiple projects. So I guess it was like 20% engineering time.
Okay. Yeah. And what do you think about the buzz that has been revolving around big data for a while now? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's thinking, okay, big data, we got to do it, but actually, not a lot of people are doing it. Do you think it's overhyped, or the amount of capabilities that you can achieve with having big data, or do you think otherwise?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to say. I would say in general, I think for the clients we actually encounter, typically they have something which resembles big data.
Yeah.
So there, I think having a Hadoop cluster and all this additional infrastructure does make sense. Maybe if you look a bit broader to the smaller corporations in the Netherlands, it doesn't always make sense.
Yeah.
And also, I think now with this quick growth of the cloud, let's say, you see this new trend, which is just a big fat machine, right? In Amazon, I can spin a VM with 256 gigabytes of memory in 5 minutes. You need to have quite a bit of data to make it not fit in 256 gigabytes of memory.
Yeah,
I think that's also something of something current. If you are able to do something in the cloud and you don't have a lot of big data or not really big data, I think these big machines are a good solution as well.
Yeah, because you talked about it a little bit before we started the podcast. The clients that you do have, are they mostly on the cloud, or are they more on premise? Or
I would say mostly cloud.
Okay, yeah. So how do you guys incorporate things like, because there's a lot of buzz around AI as well. How do you incorporate those things like AI and predictive modeling into what you do with big data? What do you do with that? Do you have any project that you incorporate that in?
Oh yeah, sure. So I think there's basically two approaches there. Typically, either you have like a batch machine learning model. Every night we compute all the recommendations, for instance, at NPO. So we were at NPO. Mm-hmm. It's a Dutch broadcasters. They have a website, and on this website there's you can view TV episodes from last week, let's say. Mm-hmm. So there's a recommendation engine on that website. We actually built it for them. And this recommendation, for every user of the NPO site, we pre-compute the recommendation once a day, every night, basically. And then this cached list, let's say, the output of this recommendation is used to generate online. If you look at a particular episode, you want to get a recommendation for what to view next. Basically, this pre-computed list is used. That sort of machine learning, I think we do quite a lot.
That's been there for a while as well. In the retail space and
so recommenders are quite common, I would say. Yeah. And I think for a recommender, this is a common approach.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the spectrum, I would say, is this Docker thing, which is relatively new.
Yeah.
So we've been doing it for quite a while now. But now you see, like, if you talk about cloud, there's now adoption from the cloud platforms as well to enable this to do this more easily. So there's stuff like AWS SageMaker, which allows you to basically host these models and get, let's say, near real-time predictions.
And there's a lot of AI going around. How do you feel that the state of AI is at the moment? Looking at everybody's talking about AI, but I don't have a feeling that people are really getting into what it really is, right? So they're saying artificial intelligence, but it's actually always based on something data driven, or something that someone really programs. Where do you think we're at what stage are we in that whole AI process? What do you think?
It's tricky. Also, for me, AI is almost a marketing term. Okay. If you would make the distinction between machine learning and AI, maybe I would make it in a way that, let's say, machine learning is the more traditional approach to data science. So, linear regressions, random forests, maybe a bit more hip than that, but more the traditional space. And then AI would be everything deep learning, something. I think what you see now more recently with this deep learning stuff is pre-trained networks, which is a really interesting idea or technique.
Yeah.
Wherein basically Google has invested countless of hours of CPU cycles to train these models, and you as a company basically use this pre-trained model to tailor it, basically modify it slightly to be applicable to a problem we encounter at the client. So that could be AI, but I'm not sure if it is.
Yeah, but you're not doing it at the moment for any clients, or?
So we're actually doing this for Royal Flora Holland. So Royal Flora Holland is basically the flower exchange in the Netherlands, in Aalsmeer. So what we did there is actually they have a project where they want to, let's say, motivate or incentivize the growers of the plants to upload nicer pictures accompanying their the plants, basically. Because this traditionally these growers they sell their flowers on the stock or on this auction, but it's an offline auction almost, right? People know each other, people know each other's reputation, so the pictures were not that important because you just know, okay, this particular grower is selling this particular plant. Every time I buy from this guy, the quality has been great. So that basically, there's no need for a picture. But now, because they are also moving to an online space, there's much more need for pretty pictures. So what we did is actually we want to see a couple different types of pictures being uploaded by the growers. One like an overview picture, one with a ruler next to it.
Oh, really? So even how big it is?
So it seems, I don't know why, but they seem to want to have a picture with a ruler there. There's a couple more examples. So some a bit of like a detailed picture. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So basically what we did there is we took a pre-trained model, VGG16 in this case, and basically made made it such that it worked for detecting a ruler on a picture, or if it's actually, and that's let's say, I would say a couple of years ago this would be a huge undertaking. If you do this traditionally with something like OpenCV, you would need a PhD in image recognition, etc., etc. But now with this transfer learning, most of the time actually is wasted on basically generating the trained test sets. So making a small subset of data wherein some pictures have a ruler, some pictures don't, and you pass it to the model. You wait like 5 minutes and it's done. So typically, really, I think that's the power of this transfer learning. That it's just a black box. You don't need to do much else than categorize or make this data set.
Yeah, and the big players are already starting to do it, right? So for example, the image recognition part. If you look at AWS, they already have services that you just upload your picture to. For example, recognition, and it will just recognize what's in the picture, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And is that something that clients also ask from you? So that they say, okay. Let's make it, we're on this and this cloud, for example. For example, we use Google Cloud, or we use Azure, or we use AWS, and we only want to use what they already have and don't just use something that's open source and create a lot of big cluster or whatever. Do they really ask that, or are they still a little bit hesitant in that sense of where the data goes and stuff like that?
Okay, so there's basically two questions.
So
let's answer the first one.
Yeah.
Do they push us to go, let's say, cloud native?
Yeah.
I don't think they do, actually. I think we try to do a lot of cloud native stuff because it just makes sense, right? We were talking about Hadoop clusters before.
Yeah.
If I'm on AWS, I would much rather spin a EMR cluster than get myself a couple of EC2 instances and try to install Hadoop there. So cloud native makes a lot of sense in that case. But I don't think we have clients which actually say only use cloud native.
Yeah.
I think they agree with us that you should try everything once, and if it doesn't fit, then just go open source and see if you can make that work better.
And you're the expert, so
yeah. And there's loads of developments. So there's bound to be, if you look at what tools we're now using and the tools we'll use in the next half year, probably already a couple of our open source tools will be replaced by cloud native stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically how it goes in our business.
And are they hesitant? Because are they hesitant with their data? Because that was the kind of the
second question. So financial institutions,
of course. Yeah.
Others, not so much.
No,
I would say.
as long as as long as it's in Europe, right? In most cases.
Yeah. So typically we just use a data center which is close.
Yeah.
And do same stuff like encryption at rest and all those things.
Yeah.
Also, for the setup or initial setup of a cloud platform, we typically use, let's say, a sister company of ours, Binx, because they're experts there. So they set up the initial security and everything around the platform, and then we build upon, let's say, this foundation being laid by these guys. Because there's just too many clouds, and it's really difficult for us to be a big data expert, but also a cloud expert. So you have to outsource some.
And because we touched on it a little bit, where do you feel we are going, like in the future? Because we have this big data. We talked about this a little bit about AI and machine learning and stuff like that. What do you think the next step is after just the big data stuff? So we get the big data, and what now? So what do you think that we're what direction are we going there?
Yeah, so I think there's a clear trend to go cloud native.
Yeah.
Like we said before, I don't think all tools are at the level we want them to be currently, but probably they will change a lot.
Which ones do you think?
Yeah, so for instance, I told you before we use Apache Airflow a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice tool, but it's not cloud native, that's for sure. Except on Google, they actually have this hosted Airflow now. But okay. So on AWS side, you could do a lot with Lambdas currently to schedule tasks, etc. But I'm missing, let's say, a dashboard with a lot of green points to show me everything is good. Right? So I think there's this component missing currently, which gives me a nice overview of
the metrics and stuff like that.
Maybe not even just a central place wherein I can see if everything is okay or not. And you can do a lot with CloudWatch and Cloud Metrics, but it's still a custom solution. So if I'm already doing something custom, then might as well just do Airflow. And then on the On the big data side, currently Spark is still king, I would say. We do a lot of Spark, but also slowly that's maybe changing. So AWS Glue basically allows you to do Spark, but probably in a bit it will allow you to do something else, which might be more easy in Spark. And you see the same on Azure as well. So they have this Data Factory where you can spin AZ Insight clusters. So soon probably they will allow you to just run Spark. And you see this tendency that Cloud Native is going to replace a lot of the, let's say, the default Hadoop stuff.
Yeah, and the default like open source projects that already
exist.
As
well.
Right? Yeah. And they of course do that because they will add some features that the open source doesn't have. So you're kind of vendor locked into their cloud, right? That's what they usually do.
Yeah, so that might be
sure. Might be a strategy.
but then again, so we get that's a question I guess we get quite often from clients. We don't wanna have any lock in.
Yeah.
Okay, but okay, it's okay. You don't want to lock in.
But you want the best solution.
Yeah. So what do you want us to do then? Should we spin our own Kafka cluster and not use Kinesis because Kinesis will get you a lock-in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then in the end, they'll choose to use Kinesis. So it's, I think, with some sensible discussions or sensible thinking, you could avoid cloud lock-in to some respect, but then again, once you're in a particular cloud, it doesn't really make sense to do this EC2 Hadoop installation if you have EMR just a few clicks away.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, we've seen it in the past before at my job as well. Is you're so easily attracted to those things because they're easy, right? I mean, if I want to store my files, I'll just use S3, right? Why would I do it on the file system? Especially when you have like a stateless application that doesn't save anything to the file system, right? And then you get to the I want to move it to Azure or something like that, and I need to change my application for that. So. Getting back to that thing, so looking at the future of big data, you're referring to it will of course still be there because it charges a lot of the future developments that we want to do, right? So what I would like to know as well is that since you became a CTO at Go Data Driven, what do you think the project is, or what are you most proud of since you started in this job? That's also always the thing that I kind of say a little bit at the end, just to know what drove you and what you were most proud of. What would you say that is?
It's I think so me as a person working for Go Data Driven, I think what I like to do personally is see what else we can use. So this, for instance, this Glue, or doing something with Data Factory, or seeing if SageMaker is now a new thing. I try to figure out how we could use that and see if we can use it at different projects and improve upon our current ways of working. I think that's one of the things I bring to the table as a CTO.
Yeah.
But also stuff more related to internals of Go Data Driven. So we have this concept of GDD Friday, so Go Data Driven Friday, where we do some experimenting. Basically, everybody is allowed to do their own thing.
Is that every Friday?
No, so it's once a month.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah.
You would like it to be every Friday.
I don't know. I would like sure. If you ask me, I think every Friday would be a good idea.
Yeah, but, that's logical.
The finances are a bit. That's a big.
That's another thing. Yeah.
But so what I did during a couple of those GD Fridays is do really wacky things. So I think a year ago we built an Ethereum miner
cool.
on these GD Fridays, and then a while back we started building these donkey cars, which are these remote controlled cars with some TensorFlow, and you can train a deep learning model. And so I try to basically stimulate innovation, or try to basically get people to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We launched the GD Moonshots a while back, wherein basically we give one person of the company 2 months of, let's say, paid time to do a particular project without any business value per se. Which one is now more or less finished, and we're going to start the next one soon. So this innovation stuff within GDD, I think that's really picking up over the last, let's say, year, and I think that's also a big change I'm proud of.
Yeah, you do that because you want to motivate your people, right? I mean, it's mostly because it's not that your normal work is dull. I mean, you're doing pretty cool stuff, but it is mostly just having the change and not the obligation to a client in this case, right? It's just trying stuff, seeing what we'll do. Actually, it's a little bit like what you do at Heineken, right?
Yeah.
It kind of resembles that a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's very true. So I think especially this GD Moonshots, I think it comes down from my idea that so if we talked a bit about productionizing machine learning models.
Yeah.
So I think what we do quite well at clients is I call that the last mile. So I think a lot of companies in the Netherlands know how to give a data scientist 1 year of his time to build the best data science model in the world.
Yeah.
But then once it's more or less finished, you need to bring it in production, and then it's not possible because he used this crazy library which is dependent on GPUs. People have heard this before.
Yeah.
So I think one thing we do best is actually do a short-running project wherein we create a pipeline which has a simple model but actually makes it to production within a relatively short time. Then we typically leave the client with this version 0.1 model which is in there. Not typically exciting, but can be easily replaced by something needing GPUs and all kinds of complexity. But it's then at least it's already in production. So that hurdle has been overcome. But for us as a company, what that means is that our data scientists are only almost always creating these version 0.1 type data science models, and never are able to do these crazy GPU-like models. So in order to give them the opportunity to do crazy stuff as well, to waste some time in developing an overcomplicated model, we came up with this idea and allowed people to actually experiment.
Yeah. And I would like to finish on that. Thank you for your time. For the listeners, you can find the podcast on iTunes. You can find it on SoundCloud as well. Follow us on Instagram. It's Bits VS Bytes. Twitter as well. And I would like to thank you for listening. And until next time.